E. A. Wallis Budge's The Dwellers on the Nile, The Life, History, Religion, and Literature of the Ancient Egyptians, with Chapter 2, The Egyptian House. Hold on a sec, want to be exact about the title. The Egyptian House and its furniture, food and drink, etc. The dress of the entity and the king had much in common. The entity had on its head a sort of helmet cap, above which was his characteristic symbol. He wore a tunic which reached from his breast to his knees, and was held in a position by two bands of straps, one over each shoulder. Round his waist was a girdle, and from its center at the back hung a long tail, made to resemble that of an animal. His legs, from the knees downwards, and feet were bare. In one hand he held a scepter, and in the other the symbol of life. The bull penis staff and the onyx. The female entity wore on her head the characteristic symbol, and usually a collar around her neck. Her body was covered by a garment woven in one piece, reaching from her breasts to a little above her ankles. It was held in position by a band or strap over each shoulder. The top of this long garment was covered by a band, which was put on after the garment, and its position was immediately below her breasts. Her ankles and feet were bare. In some pictures, the female entity wears bracelets or bangles and anklets. The king, like the entity, wore a loincloth, which was kept in its place by means of a band or belt and a strap of linen. Sometimes this was supplemented by a short tunic, the fold of which projected in front. From the back of the waistband or belt hung in the earliest times a jackal's tail. Again, rumbling the tumbly again. But at a later period, an artificial tail took its place. Round his neck, the king wore a collar, which was sometimes deep enough to cover the upper part of the breast, and on his head a helmet cap, usually made of leather or linen. The two side flaps, which fell, one over each shoulder, on to the breast. Under the New Kingdom, shoulder cloths and long garments, like the cloaks worn by the Egyptians at the present time, came into use. The artisan classes wore loincloths and short tunics over them, and their forms and styles varied very little in the course of centuries. The peasant class wore very little clothing, and their dress, both for men and women, consisted of a single garment, even as it does in Egypt and the Sudan today. The slave usually wore nothing. Women, including the queen, wore a single garment, which was held in position by a band tied under the breasts and which reached to the ankles. Both the upper and lower hems were ornamented with designs in needlework, which were more or less elaborate. Originally, women of all classes were content to wear garments made of homespun linen, which closely resembled the demure linen seen in the Sudan at the present day. But at this time went on weavers learned how to make the fine diaphanous fabrics, which are now generally called byssus, and these were commonly used in making the apparel of the queen and the princesses and the wives and daughters of rich men and high officials. The headdress of the queen was usually made in the form of the vulture entity, Mut, i.e., the mother, because the queen was held to be the mother of the nation. The linen garments of the rich were washed in the river Nile by professional washermen, and those of the poorer classes by the women of the household. The clothes were laid upon flat stones and well beaten with palm sticks or even stones, and it seems that fine sand or earth was used in the process of cleansing instead of soap. In the Ptolemaic period, and perhaps earlier, I gotta look at the Greek so I can say that right, and probably earlier, the Egyptians used cakes of a kind of soap, which was called Anchaiwurb. Oh, okay, okay. Anchaiwula.